Welcome, boys and girls, to day 4 of Lighthouse Lessons. We are so glad that you're here today. It's our last day here at the Lighthouse Lessons. But we are so glad that you've been with us all week and we've learned some very wonderful things about God. Let's go over to our treasure map and kind of review a little bit of what we've learned. On day 1, does anybody remember? It's God is great. He's number 1. He is the one and only true God. And then we went all the way over here to this one. God is almighty. We learned those big words: omnipresent, omniscient, and what's the other one? Omnipresent. We are so glad that God is with us everywhere we go, aren't we? All right, then we went all the way over here. We talked a little bit about God being the ruler, but then we camped out on God is with us. Emmanuel. God sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for us today. And today we are going to go all the way up here to the finish line up here in the mountain area. And does anybody remember where we get our medallions? Out of our treasure chest, right? So I'm going to reach in here and get the very last one. All right. It says, God is trustworthy. Now, remember the other day we got a clue in a little bottle that was washed on shore? Well, this morning I found another clue in this bottle, so we are going to see what this clue says. This clue is going to help us learn a little bit more about God. It says, if you look closely, you may find a jewel that's one of a kind. Well, I kind of looked all around and I couldn't really see anything close to the bottle. But then after a little bit, this cool shell washed up on the shore. And I picked it up. And these shells are really cool. Has anybody ever put a shell to your ear and you can hear the ocean inside of a shell? It's so cool. But inside this shell was an amazing thing, and I'm going to show you what it is. Can anybody see what that is? Might be kind of hard to see. It's a sparkly jewel. It's very, very clear and very sparkly. Can anybody think of what it might be? It's a diamond. This is the biggest diamond I've ever seen. Now, what do you think a diamond would have anything to do with God? Or why would a diamond remind us of God? Diamonds, they say, are, first of all, one of the most precious jewels there is on earth. And it's also one of the very strongest things in the world. So we know if we look at a diamond, we can think about God being very, very precious, and also he is strong and mighty. He is trustworthy. He's never going to change. He's never going to fail us. Isn't that exciting? So when you see a diamond, maybe on your mom's finger, her wedding ring is a diamond, or you might see a diamond in something else, you can think that God is strong and he is a precious jewel. Now, today's Bible story we find in the Bible, and we got our big old treasure Bible out here, remember? So we'll get the Bible. This story that we're going to hear today is from the book of 1 Samuel. And we know that all of our stories that we hear at the Lighthouse Lessons come from God's word to us. So we're going to have Pastor Nathan come up and tell us our Bible story.
Hello, everyone. As Miss Cheryl had said, today we're going to learn a lesson from the book of 1 Samuel. This is a story that happened 3,000 years ago, and it's about two armies one person who trusted God against, well, a giant. And some of you may know this story already, but some of you may not, and it's going to be a good one. So the two armies at this time were the people of Israel, the people who loved God. They were one army, and then the next army was the Philistines, and they did not love God. And both of these armies came together to battle it out, to fight. So they were on opposite sides of the battlefield, and in between was this valley. And before they started their battle, one guy from the Philistines, the side that didn't love God, he stepped out into the middle of the valley and he said, "Look here, Israel. Let's not all fight. Let's just have your best guy fight me, the best guy on the Philistine army." Now, this guy was not just an ordinary man. He wasn't an ordinary soldier. He was a giant. He was super tall. He was 9 feet tall. Now, if you look at me, I'm about 6 feet tall. So that's why I have my trusty stepladder here to show you actually how tall this guy was. Here we go. Ooh. This is how tall Goliath was. Boom. He is humongous. And he looks down on the army of Israel and he says, "All these people are pathetic. I can beat any one of them in a fight. So how about you come and fight me?" This is how tall he is. That's pretty crazy. He's huge. And he says, "If any of you defeat me in battle, we will all become your slaves. But if I defeat your strongest guy in battle, you are going to become our slaves." So the stakes are very high. Another thing about this guy, Goliath, he was arrayed in all of the trappings of a good soldier. He had a helmet of bronze. I don't know if you know what bronze is. It's a very hard type of metal. He had shield. He had armor. He had a sword. His sword was probably bigger than this one, but this is a real sword. So be careful out there, you guys watching. He had a nice sword, but he also had something called a javelin, which is a type of spear that you throw. And this javelin was 13 feet high, and it weighed 30 pounds. So I have a bamboo fishing rod here that's very close to that size. It's very close to that size. I don't even know if you can see the top of it. This is only 12 feet tall, so one more foot on that. So here you go. Here's the soldier that's saying, "Come and fight me." Boom. Whew. That's pretty intimidating. That is scary. And guess how many Israelite soldiers wanted to go out and fight this guy, this giant of a man? If you said 0, that's correct. No one wanted to. Everyone was scared of this guy. And I would be too. If some guy this tall said, "Hey, fight me," I would say, "Hey, no, I'm not going to do that. You're too scary and I don't want to die." So that's the situation. And for 40 more days, Goliath would go out and say, "Hey, someone fight me. Someone come and fight me." And no one did. No one in the Israelite army would. Now let's move away from the battlefield for a second, and we'll go to this small family. I guess it's not very small. This family in Israel, and we'll look at their youngest son. His name is David. His father's name is Jesse, and he was pretty wealthy. 3 of his older sons were in the Israelite army looking down on Goliath in the valley, not wanting to fight him. But David is the youngest, and he is usually taking care of sheep. And for the youngest son to be taking care of sheep, that's kind of like the job at home, the chore that no one wants to do. For me, I have to clean toilets. And I don't like doing that. That's kind of like what it is. You have to take care of the sheep, David. You have to go clean toilets, David. You have to do things that no one wants to do, David. So David, being the youngest, has to take care of sheep. One day, his father, Jesse, comes and says, "Hey, David, I want you to take all this food and supplies to your 3 brothers in the army." And David's like, "Sure, why not? Someone's got to watch my sheep, but I'll go and see my brothers and give them this stuff." So he travels to the battlefield, and he sees what's going on once he arrives there. He arrives there, and he sees Goliath down in the valley making fun of the army. He's making fun of God. He's taunting them. He's saying all these nasty curses, and David's like, whoa, what's going on here? And one of his oldest brother says, "That guy, he doesn't love God, and he's wanting someone to fight him. But no one here has enough courage to do that. No one wants to fight this guy, and you can see why. He's huge. And David's like, aren't we the army of the Lord? Why is no one doing this? Maybe I will do it. So David goes to the king of Israel. His name is Saul. And he goes to Saul and he says, King Saul, I'll fight this guy. I'll fight him. And Saul looks at him and he sees this young teenage boy and he says, David, I'm not going to let you fight Goliath. You're tiny, he's huge. You're young, he's been in the army longer than you've been alive, basically. I can't let you go out and fight that guy. And David says something that's very, very inspiring. He says, Saul, yes, I'm small. I'm pretty small. But guess what? I'm also a shepherd, and I take care of sheep at my father's house. And do you know what like to eat sheep? Lions and bears. And guess what? I have to protect my sheep from lions and bears. And guess what also? God gives me the strength to fight off lions and bears. And if God can protect me from lions and bears, God can protect me from this giant here. I don't know how many of you have been to zoos. I go to them quite often. I love them. And when I see a lion just laying there, I say, oh, that's cute. He's behind bars or whatever. But then when he roars, it freaks me out. I go, ah! That lion just roared and it scared me. Now, let's just think if those bars weren't there and that lion was right in front of me, I would not have the courage to fight off a lion to protect some sheep. I'd be like, bye, sheep. I'm going to go save myself. Lion, have some dinner. But that's not David. David trusted in God to protect him from the lions and the bears. Don't forget about the bears. And he says, God protected me from them. He will protect me from Goliath. And Saul says, you know what? Let's try it. And so he gives David a bunch of armor. And David puts it on. And he walks around and he's like, wait a minute, this doesn't feel right. None of this stuff is made for me. This is too big or it doesn't fit right. Thank you, Saul, for the idea, but I'm not going to do it. So he takes all that stuff off. And he says, God will protect me as I am. I'm going to go out there and fight this Goliath. So he goes down to the battlefield, and he steps out of the ranks of the Israelites, and he looks up at Goliath. Goliath is up there because he's so tall. And he says, Goliath, I'm going to fight you. And all David has with him is a sling, which is just a strap of leather, a few rocks, and a stick, like a walking stick or a shepherd's crook. That's all he has to fight this guy who's got a 13-foot tall spear, a sword, and armor. Doesn't seem quite fair, does it? And Goliath notices it too. He looks down on this little kid, basically, to him, and he says, what do I look like? Do I look like a dog that you would come at me with a stick and some rocks? I'm not going to die like a squirrel on the road or something if you hit me with a stick. You know what? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to defeat you. And I'm going to leave your body right there for the birds and the wild animals to eat. Now that's, again, pretty intimidating. He says, the one thing I wouldn't want to hear if I was fighting a big guy, I'm going to kill you and your body's going to get eaten by animals. That's not what you want to hear. But guess what? David didn't cower in fear. David didn't have any smarty pants comment. He just says, no, Goliath, no. That is not the case. God will protect me. God will fight for me. You may be huge and I may be small, but God's bigger than both of us. This battle belongs to the Lord. David was not intimidated, and he trusted God with his life against this big old giant because God is trustworthy, because God has shown himself to be trusted back in David's past when he fought off lions and bears, and now he will protect him again. So Goliath obviously doesn't like that. He's ready for the fight, and he starts coming at David. So David puts a stick down, probably, grabs his leather strap, puts a rock in it, and he starts twirling it over his head. That's right. It's not a slingshot where you shoot it like this. It's a sling where you fling it over your head like this. So David whips it around his head like this, and he flings it at the giant as he's charging. And Goliath, even with his helmet on, the rock hits him right here in the forehead. Right here in the forehead. And I don't know if you've ever been hit in the head with anything hard. It hurts a lot. But it also can do some damage to your brain. So he got hit right here in the head, and he just topples forward. And David, seeing his chance, the rock may have killed Goliath. We don't know for sure. But he sees his chance. He runs over, grabs Goliath's sword, his own sword, pulls it out of its sheath, and he cuts off the Goliath's head, the giant's head. And with that, the battle is won. The Philistines see their best fighter die at the hands of this little kid, and they're like, okay, we're out of here. And they run away. They just turn around and run because they're afraid of David, they're afraid of the Israelites, and they're afraid of God because God gave this strength to this little kid, or this young man, to kill a giant. And David knew it right away. He said, I'm trusting God to take you down because this fight is his. And you know what? We're all going to face things in our lives. You have a lot more life than I do. You're going to face some things in your life that may seem like you're fighting against a giant. There may be questions out there that are so big and they don't have an answer that you know that feel like you're facing an unknown situation like this giant. But you should be like David and trust God because God is trustworthy. That's part of his character. God is loving and he's caring and he's trustworthy. And all you have to do is just trust in him. And he will pull you through that situation, through that fight, through anything, just like he did with David. So God is what? He is trustworthy. And that is the story of David and Goliath. Thanks for being here at the Lighthouse lesson, and we'll see you later.